I never thought I'd be the kind of woman to ask for something like this. If you knew me, you'd probably laugh, quiet, polite, the kind of girl who folds laundry before he even asks. I never raised my voice, never argued when he came home late. Never once hinted that there was this secret place inside me that ached to lose control completely. But a few weeks ago, lying next to him in the dark, with my cheek against his chest and his heartbeat under my ear, the words slipped out before I could catch them. I want to try to be your toy. Didn't even sound like my voice. It sounded small, almost childish, but the tremor in my stomach said otherwise. He laughed at first. A soft, surprised huff that made my face burn with embarrassment. I tried to pull away, hide under the covers, pretend I'd been joking, but he caught my wrist. His laughter faded so quickly it made my pulse jump. "Say it again," he whispered into my hair. I couldn't, so I just nodded. He didn't push me that night. He only kissed my forehead and told me to sleep, but I didn't. I lay awake for hours, feeling the heat between my legs throb in time with every possible scenario my mind could conjure. I told myself I'd never bring it up again. But the next morning he was different. Watching me stir sugar into my coffee like he was imagining something I couldn't quite read yet. And that's how, exactly 1 week later, I found myself on my back, wrists bound gently to the headboard with his old silk tie. My heartbeat louder than my thoughts. His eyes so calm they made me dizzy. He tied me to the bed. But it was my idea. He made me promise first that if I wanted this, truly wanted it, I wouldn't hide behind my quiet habits or my sweet nods. That if I needed him to stop, I'd say so. Loudly. I don't know which part terrified me more. The idea that I could stop him, or the truth that deep down I didn't want to. I remember how his fingers trembled the first time he knotted the silk around my wrists. He tried to hide it behind that steady grin he always wore when he teased me, but I could feel his breath quicken every time the fabric brushed my skin. "Are you sure?" he asked again. His lips so close to mine that I could taste the warmth of his words. I could have whispered no. I could have begged him to untie me, kiss me softly like he always did, and pretend I was still that quiet, obedient girl who never needed more than gentle love in the dark. But my body betrayed me. I arched closer, testing the ties. I wanted to feel them hold me there. Wanted to feel him watch me, wide-eyed, helpless, hungry. "Please," I breathed. One word. Honest in a way I'd never been before. He chuckled, low, careful, and brushed my hair back from my face. I could see it then, this new side of him. The part that had always been there, hidden behind polite laughter and work shirts and lazy Sunday mornings. His hand traced down my arm, over the silk binding my wrist. He pressed a kiss to my palm. "You have no idea," he murmured, "what you're doing to me right now." I wanted to tell him I was scared. But the truth was, I wasn't scared at all. Not anymore. I was burning. And I wanted him to watch me burn. I thought I'd feel trapped. I thought the silk biting softly into my wrists would make me panic, maybe beg him to free me before we even began. But instead, the knot felt like an anchor. Something that kept me exactly where I'd secretly always wanted to be. Right under his eyes, unable to hide. He didn't touch me right away. That was the worst part, or maybe the best. He just sat there on the edge of the bed, one hand resting near my hip, his eyes taking me in piece by piece, like he was committing every shiver to memory. I tried to twist away from his stare, but the tie reminded me. I couldn't. My breath hitched. He noticed. "Look at you," he said, almost to himself. His fingers hovered an inch above my skin, not quite brushing, just close enough that every tiny shift in the air made my nerves dance. So quiet all this time. "And this is what you wanted?" My mouth was dry. I nodded anyway. He shook his head slowly, like I just confessed a sin he intended to savor. When he finally touched me, just the soft slide of his palm along my thigh, my whole body flinched against the restraint. He liked that. I could tell by the way his lips curved, his thumb circling slow, lazy patterns that made my toes curl. Every inch of me was begging, straining against silk and self-control, trying to rise to meet his touch, and every time I did, he pulled away, letting me feel the emptiness he left behind. "Be patient," he murmured, brushing his lips just under my ear. I could feel his smile against my skin. "Tonight you're mine. Exactly how you asked for it." And in that moment, tied and trembling beneath him, I realized I wanted to be braver than I'd ever dared to be. and I wanted him to see every raw, honest second of it. Time stopped meaning anything. It was just his mouth, his breath, the deliberate way his hands explored me like I was something precious and dangerous at the same time. Every touch felt too gentle and too much. I wanted to cry out, but all that escaped me were broken whispers of his name. He kept testing me, pressing closer, then pulling back, letting the heat build until my whole body tightened against the silk that bound me there. Sometimes he'd pause, hovering just inches away, so I could feel his warmth but not the relief of his touch. "Tell me what you want," he murmured once, his voice almost mocking but his eyes soft. "Use that pretty mouth you keep so quiet." It should have embarrassed me. Maybe it did, but not enough to stop the way my hips lifted instinctively, chasing him. I heard myself beg. Words I never imagined I'd say stumbled out in ragged breaths. More, "Please don't stop. Please, please." And when he finally obeyed, when he pressed his mouth against my throat and moved his hands exactly where I dreamed they'd go, the rush that rolled through me made my vision blur at the edges. The silk ties held me to the bed, but in truth, it was him, his voice, the weight of his body, the steadiness in his eyes, that kept me from unraveling completely. Somewhere in that dizzy heat, I realized this wasn't just for him. I wanted this for me. To feel myself break open in his hands and know I had asked for every second of it. "Good girl," he breathed against my shoulder. And I swear my whole body turned to fire at those two simple words. I thought surrender would feel like weakness. But as his hands pinned my hips, as his mouth traced every secret line of my skin, I realized it was the opposite. I had never felt so powerful. Every sigh that broke from my lips made him rougher, slower, more desperate to hear me lose the quiet I'd worn like armor for years. The silk ties strained as I moved beneath him, not to escape, but to pull him closer, deeper into the storm he'd coaxed out of me. He laughed once, breathless, when I tugged hard enough that the headboard creaked. "Careful," he whispered against my collarbone, his voice rough with something almost like awe. "You'll break my bed before you break these knots." I could barely form words. All I could do was breathe his name and feel every inch of him as he pressed closer, letting his weight sink into me until the world shrank to skin and heat and silk slipping tighter around my wrists. When it became too much, when my body trembled so hard I thought I'd float right out of myself, he pressed his forehead to mine, his thumb brushing my cheek like a promise. "Stay with me," he ordered softly. I did. I shattered beneath him, not quietly at all. And the sound of it made him kiss me like he'd never stop. By the time the trembling ebbed, I was limp against the pillows, sweat cooling on my skin, my wrists still bound but my mind freer than it had ever been. And him, the man I'd trusted with every hidden part of me, looked down at me like I'd just rewritten every rule we'd ever lived by. He didn't untie me right away. He traced the marks the silk had left around my wrists with careful fingers, as if he wanted to memorize the proof of what we'd done. His eyes stayed locked on mine, dark, tender, and a little stunned, like he couldn't believe I'd let him see this side of me. "Did I hurt you?" he asked. His voice was softer than I'd ever heard it, a warm hush that made my heart ache in my chest. I shook my head, too spent to find my voice. My throat still raw from all the quiet I'd finally let slip out. He kissed the inside of each wrist before untying me. The silk slid free, leaving behind nothing but a memory and a pulse deep inside me that wouldn't calm down. I thought I'd feel shy afterward. Embarrassed. Maybe I'd want to hide my face in his chest and pretend I hadn't begged him the way I did. But lying there, arms free, body heavy and humming with leftover heat, I realized I didn't want to pretend at all. I wanted him to know. The quiet girl he thought he knew had teeth, had fire, had secrets she'd barely begun to show him. He lay down beside me, one hand draped over my stomach, the other brushing lazy circles against my thigh. "You were amazing," he whispered against my temple, half laughing, half reverent. "Braver than me, I think." I turned to face him, still breathless, still tasting him on my tongue. "Next time," I murmured, my voice raw but certain, "use rope instead." And the way his eyes darkened at that, God, I knew this was only the beginning.